How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys, Alex and Ryan. So today we're talking about two players the Yankees have actually cut this year and how their seasons have kind of turned in a different direction, why we think that's happened, and ultimately, why are some players leaving the Yankees and playing better? It could be the lack of pressure that's on them. It could be I think it's mostly mental, personally. I think the fans and the hostility and the criticism and the expectations all get to people's head, and they forget about their instincts. They don't let their instincts take over, and they suddenly let their minds take over. And once you're in your own head, and if you're playing baseball, it's a game of very small margins. Anything that could impact your quality will impact your quality. And ultimately, I think that's affected some guys on this team and guys that aren't on this team anymore. So I want to talk about Josh Donaldson, who's been playing pretty well for the Milwaukee Brewers, and Aaron Hicks, who's had a phenomenal season with the Baltimore Orioles, over 50 games this year. So kind of a crazy turn of events for these guys. And, I'm certainly kind of annoyed because where was this Aaron Hicks? Why didn't we have him in center field hitting like this? It's a little bit disappointing to see the Yankees have to eat $10 million over the next couple seasons until he ends up, coming off the books, and he's performing really well for a AL East rival. A little frustrating, Ryan, I'd say. So, before we dive into these two guys and kind of what's going on over there, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing all right. This is a weird conversation. It's like a weird kind of, hey, look, Aaron Hicks has a 112 WRC plus this year. But in the same vein, it's like, I don't think any fans are allowed to complain. Like, hey, I'm going to be real with you, Alex. How many people in our comment sections were like, hey, you have to DFA Hicks before the season, right? I didn't think that Aaron Hicks being DFA'd was a bad thing for the Yankees, and I still don't feel that way. I don't think it was going to work here. The comments publicly about Aaron Boone, I guess, didn't rub the organization the right way. Not that people don't like not Aaron Boone, excuse me. Not that people didn't like Aaron Hicks in the clubhouse, or not that Aaron Boone didn't like Aaron Hicks, but it felt like it was time to move on, and they did. And who could have seen Aaron Hicks going out and being as good with the Orioles? I don't think anybody could have. Now, I did say I didn't think it was impossible for him to be an average player in the offseason, and that's really what I was big on. I was like, hey, can Aaron Hicks be an average player? The Yankees just need average players. And lo and behold, he's been an average player this year. Actually, a little bit better than average, I think is fair to say. And I think that was always capable. That was always in the cards for him. I think that was always his median outcome. I always thought he was a better player than fans gave it credit for. And that's kind of the situation now. Baltimore's given him a chance to play. He's on a fun young team. He's gotten injured a couple times over there. That's kind of something he's always dealt with. But when he's healthy, he's performed with them. And I'm happy for him. It's not like Aaron Hicks on this team would have changed anything. It's like having a 112 WRC plus left fielder was the difference between winning, a wild card spot or not making the playoffs, unless you're suggesting that Aaron Hicks is an 8-win player, which, I mean, no. I'm not too mad. I'm not too mad that Aaron Hicks is performing well. I'm not frustrated by it. I do think it does kind of just for me, it's just kind of like hey, next time the fans should be a little more patient, or, next time we should kind of think a little bit before we're, going out and saying a guy's never been good with the Yankees, right? The Josh Donaldson thing I think is a little different. I genuinely don't think Josh Donaldson's good. I think this a little bit of fugazi. But hey, that's another guy who he was underperforming his batted ball data. He's gone to Milwaukee and he's kind of just run into a couple home runs, and it's kind of what you expected in the underlying metrics. Now, is Donaldson gonna play a lot in the postseason? We'll wait and see. I think Milwaukee kind of needs all the help they can get, and they'll ride the hot hand. If Josh Donaldson is even a league average hitter with them, I think he'll play a lot. We obviously know what he provides on the defensive side of the ball. That's never been a question for Josh Donaldson. But for both of these guys, I think it was time for us to move on. I don't think that's really the debate we're having. But the question now becomes, all right, number one, what are we doing on our major league player development side or hitting side that isn't working? Number two, why is it that guys are performing better when they leave New York? Are we acquiring guys with the right makeup, or are they mentally prepared to handle New York? Is that something on the organization side of things? Is that just a factor of playing in New York? I think it's a much more nuanced conversation than just the Yankees failed Aaron Hicks or the Yankees failed Josh Donaldson or they're flukes or this or that. And I kind of want to pass this off to you, Alex, with this. This just does feel like a complicated matter. It brings a lot of factors and variables that we can't necessarily quantify. It's not as simple as saying, oh, he's not throwing as hard. If a pitcher's struggling, his velocity is down, or his slider isn't moving as much, or his fastball doesn't have the life it had. This is kind of like what went wrong, how much of it was New York, how much of it was pressure. So yeah, I just kind of want to get your gauge on what you thought Aaron Hicks and Donaldson, what their downfalls were in New York.
Well, let's get one thing right out of the way here, as you kind of alluded to before. It was the right decision to let these guys go. Donaldson was taking up a roster spot that we wanted to see Oswald Peraza in, and Aaron Hicks was performing poorly, and he was speaking out against the executives, and like that's obviously unacceptable. What really confuses me is how he went from 28 games this year with the Yankees, hitting 188 with a 263 OBP and a 49 WRC plus, to over 57 games with Baltimore this year. 57 games, double the sample size, has hit 7 homers, 29 RBIs, has a 288 average, 386 OBP, 135 WRC plus, and has collected 1.54. He's 35% better than the average offensive player, and he's almost 100% better than he was with the Yankees earlier this year. His strikeout rate has decreased by 5%. His walk rate has increased by 5%. He's just a better player overall. And Donaldson, on the other hand, not as lucrative as an improvement, still 37 years old, a little bit on the older side now, but he still has a 113 WRC plus with Milwaukee. So he's 13% better than the average, and he's, like 40% better than when he was in the Yankees? Again, the sample size, 9 games, not as big as the 57 of Aaron Hicks, but it's got to be mental to a degree for me. I think you are onto something when you say, I don't think that there are players out there that do not have the mental makeup to play in New York. I think that I don't want to call them soft, but there are guys that just don't have that mental fortitude to take on that criticism, run with it, and challenge themselves to overcome it. Hicks, I think, was capable of that a couple of years ago, but I think he lost it because of the inconsistency due to the injuries and whatnot, the wrist injury. I think it compounded and got just significantly worse for him over time. Donaldson just never was that good here. I think that age caught up to him significantly, and mixed in with the booing and the hostility and the comments, I think mixed in with all of that, he just hit a wall. I think going to Milwaukee, where he has nothing to lose, they brought him in as a last resort, and all he has to do is be okay to make an impact on that team, because what they had prior was not, obviously carrying their weight. So, Hicks goes into a position where, like you said, he's on a really fun young team. He's able to make an impact there. The expectations were nothing going into this season, but now obviously they're elevated, and he's able to ride that wave. And Donaldson's just doing the bare minimum of what his capacity holds and hitting a home run every now and then. He had a 3-run home run last night to win a game. So, that's kind of like, okay, we haven't seen Donaldson do that with the Yankees. Hicks has been bad for years. Why are they turning it around? I think it really is a lot of it has to be mental. What portion of it do you think is mental? Because, we're seeing a lot of guys on the team, notably Giancarlo Stanton, that there are physical limitations there, but how much of it do you think is it just him in his own head at this point? If that is the case and it is mental, is there a way back from that? Because, he said yesterday he's had a terrible season. He's working hard. He doesn't know what to tell anyone that believes he isn't working hard. But, at a certain point, you have to ask, what do you have to do mentally to get back on track? What do you think some of these guys can do? Like go to a sports psychologist? Because I feel like maybe that would be beneficial, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I want people to put it in this perspective. Imagine if you were struggling at your job or something you really liked doing, your career, whatever it may be. You put a lot of work into it. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it, and it's magnified. It is on a public scale. Everybody has an opinion on it, and you're trying to figure it out, and it's really hard to figure out. It's not something as simple as, just do this. Like, there are physical factors involved. As you mentioned with Stan, like, it's his body giving out on him. How much of that can he control, right? Compound that with the Yankees not being great this year, right? Like last year, Aaron Hicks struggling towards the end was kind of cast to the side because that team was pretty good. That team won 99 games. There wasn't pressure to win games for most of that season, right? So it really felt like, all right, you can kind of live with Josh Donaldson. Like, not that Josh Donaldson wasn't a problem last year, but I don't feel like I was as upset at Josh Donaldson in, let's say, July of last year as I was in July of this year, right? Or, Aaron Hicks. I was not as frustrated by Aaron Hicks in July of last year as I was, in April of this year. It's a different situation. It's a different team. The team wasn't, just far and away the best team in the American League East. This team is arguably the worst team in the American League East. They could finish in last place. So, there are a lot of different factors, and it's tough, right? As you mentioned, like, what can they do on the mental side of things? Is that the big contributor here? I think for Donaldson and Hicks, it just compounded. I think they just needed a new, just to go somewhere different. Again, in Donaldson's case, I don't really believe in the physical tools at this point. I just think he's hitting a wall age-wise. For Aaron Hicks, I really do believe most of it was mental. I mean, you think of that play last year where he drops the ball, he leans against the wall, and it's just kind of like he looks defeated, right? Like, I know that people chart that up as a lazy play. I never viewed it as a lazy play. I viewed it as like a guy who's like, dude, can I just get a break? Like, just one, like, just anything to go for me. Like, that ball can't fall in my glove. It has to drop fair. You know what I mean? Like, it couldn't go foul. Is that really where we're at right now? I think of Joey Gallo, right? Joey Gallo, the struggle is just kind of compounded. It never really got better. And in New York, it's really tough to just turn things around. And sometimes restarting, I mean, everybody, I think, can experience, whether it's switching majors or going to a new school or going to a new job or whatever it may be. Everybody has that feeling of like, hey, I just need this to change. This isn't where I feel right. And they perform better in those new environments. Overall, I don't think it's a matter of like, oh, the Yankees are doing something horrific to like their players. It's just a matter of like, it's New York. Like, it's not easy. It's not easy on your mind. It's stressful. And when you're trying to play baseball and you're stressed all the time, it doesn't combine very well. Try working when you're not stressed. It's a terrible experience. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't really know how to put this in a way that sounds relatable because, again, these are professional athletes. I'm not a professional athlete, but that's just kind of how I interpret the situation. It's a stressful thing. It's hard to, have that compound and continue to look forward. And in their cases, they got a fresh start and things got better. I don't know what the future looks like for Stanton, but unlike Hicks and Donaldson, it's not as easy to just say, all right, DFA and find somewhere else. You know what I mean?
It's not that easy. You can't do that with guys you're paying $22 and up $1 million per season. You need them to turn it around. In Hicks's case, he was deflated. He was defeated. You know what I mean? He was not here during the first half of when he was playing with the Yankees this season. He just wasn't. He wasn't checked in. You know what I mean? And that happens after constant criticism, boost, strikeouts, compounding variables. He just hit a wall, and I think he finally was able to hit that reset button, and he is getting the best out of himself. And I can respect that, and I think that a change of scenery does a lot of good for a lot of people all the time. Same thing with Donaldson for at least a little bit of a marginal impact there in Milwaukee. But if I'm the Yankees, you got to be working on how to get your players mentally prepared for what is a grueling season in the Bronx, because I think there's like something to players on the Yankees that perform better away from the Bronx than they do at home. I think that like the boos, the awful, just I don't know. I'm not blaming the fans by any means, because we expect a lot, and when you're being paid that much money, you are expected to perform. But I will say I do think as a human, I understand where they're coming from at times when they just lose confidence in themselves and they need to rebuild themselves back up. But it's not to say this doesn't happen on other teams. So think about Alek Manoah. I mean, he's a perfect example of a guy that just completely crumbled in a market that is not as brutal as the Yankees one is. So, you see it happen all over the place. The Yankees just need players with stronger mindsets, and I think guys like Volpe have it. I think, of course, Judge has it. But again, these guys are like the fans are willing to give Volpe a longer leash. We've given some of those players a long leash. Donaldson had 2 years, and he did not come to play. Hicks had years, and he kept getting injured and inconsistent. Stanton has had 2 years, and it's been bad. So, I think fans, when you say like being patient is important, I agree. But at a certain point, like what's the line that you have to draw in the sand? What's the line of amount of time that it takes until you're like, okay, this guy is not performing. Like he's done. He's finished. So I think we're kind of we're going to be seeing what happens with Stanton over the next couple of years, and maybe after next season. Like, where do the Yankees draw the line in the sand if he keeps struggling? 3 consecutive years at $22 million. Who knows? We're going to find out pretty soon. But you know what, guys? It's very interesting to see a lot of these players go on to have good second half of their careers on another team, or even just continue on and have success elsewhere, after playing for the Yankees. So kind of just a weird thing I wanted to talk about today, because it stood out to me. I was looking at Hicks' numbers, and I was like, what the hell? This is a different player. This is a guy we have not seen maybe ever. So, definitely something that drew my gaze and drew my attention. Wanted to get your guys' take on it. As always, make sure to drop your takes in the YouTube comments. Make sure to like and subscribe as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.